You ever get that uneasy feeling that something's been wrong for a long time? Like everybody has been quietly agreeing with the same neat story for years, but inside you know pieces don't add up? That's exactly the vibe around Tupac Shakur's death right now. For nearly 30 years, we were fed a tidy version. The Vegas shooting, 6 days in the hospital, then he died. End of story. But suddenly, that neat story is cracking, and not because of some wild internet rumor. This time, it comes from someone with real connection, Shakur, Tupac's biological brother, speaking calmly on national TV, deliberately tearing the familiar tale apart. McCree didn't scream. He didn't shout accusations. He sat across from Piers Morgan and talked steady, like a man who has carried a heavy secret for decades. When Morgan mentioned Diddy, yes, that Diddy, McCree's reaction said everything. It wasn't the kind of response you get from a stranger or a gossip. His face, his tone, the small, careful movements, they suggested knowledge deeper than surface rumor. He told a story about a phone call in 2008. Out of nowhere, Diddy allegedly rang him up to insist he had nothing to do with Tupac's death. Think about that. Who randomly calls the family of a murder victim 12 years later to make such a claim? Innocent people don't usually chase down grieving relatives to clear their names. Guilty people worry in odd ways. They try to soothe doubts. McCree didn't buy it then, and he doesn't now. He told Diddy one thing that's hard to forget. The truth always comes out. Those 4 words hit like a prophecy. Fast forward to 2025, and Diddy's world is crumbling. Law enforcement raided homes linked to him. His name appears on federal documents. Charges are piling up. And people are starting to look back at the 1990s with fresh eyes. Here's where it gets chilling. You've probably heard about Keefe D, the man charged in connection with the shooting. During federal interviews, he supposedly mentioned Diddy's name 47 times. Not once, not a few times, 47 mentions. These weren't barroom boasts. They were recorded, time-stamped conversations with agents. Keefe D described bounties, secret meetings, and alleged comments about wanting Tupac and Suge Knight dead. If those tapes were meaningless, why weren't they made public sooner? Why did prosecutors keep them quiet for decades? In the 1990s, Diddy was almost untouchable. Fame, money, influence, and networks can shield people. Now that shield looks fragile. Recent searches of Diddy-related properties turned up documents marked simply Cuba. That discovery opens a different path in the story. For years, people joked about Tupac faking his death and fleeing to Cuba. It sounded like a fever dream when whispered on forums or between fans. But files labeled with that Caribbean island in Diddy's private holdings are not a joke. They're evidence that needs explaining. If communications, payments, or contacts with Cuba existed, it suggests planning beyond a single night's violence. Think about it from McCree's side. You're the brother of one of the most famous rappers the world has known. For years, your family has been haunted by rumors. Then a man whose name has been tied to that pain suddenly reaches out to you. He doesn't attack or threaten, he calls to defend himself. That doesn't feel like an attempt to restore reputation. It feels like an attempt to control a story. McCree listened, and he watched. He replied simply, "The truth will come out." Now the truth is approaching, drop by drop. The federal charges faced today, racketeering, extortion, money crimes, might read like typical white-collar allegations on the surface. But when you dig into the courtroom filings, a darker pattern appears. Those infamous parties people used to laugh about? According to court papers, some were staged precisely to trap people. Attendees were filmed in compromising situations. Footage was kept, stored like ammunition. When someone became troublesome, inconvenient, too vocal, or a potential leak, those recordings could be used like a blade. Cut them off, silence them, or force them to comply. Blackmail wasn't an occasional tactic, it was the system. If a music label transforms from a creative home into a machine for influence, it could have long-term effects. Artists become assets to be managed. Loyalties are forced. Secrets are currency. If you have leverage, whether through recordings, debts, favors, or threats, You can shape careers, partnerships, and personal choices. That kind of machinery, if it existed in the 1990s, might have been quieter, but that only makes it more dangerous. Secrecy is easier to maintain when fewer people know the truth. Rewind to September 1996, the night after the Tyson fight in Las Vegas. There were thousands on the Strip, cameras, lights, crowds. Yet the shooter vanished into that chaos. No clear, usable footage. No arrests that led to conviction. Suge Knight, who sat next to Tupac, survived. He was not convicted in connection with the shooting. No one has served time specifically for Tupac's killing. That absence of closure feels unnatural. When high-profile crimes end without answers, it can mean two things. Either investigators missed something vital, or someone powerful ensured they didn't find what they were looking for. Strange details multiply. The coroner's report included oddities like incorrect basic measurements. The person who cremated the body allegedly retired abruptly soon after. These aren't mere small mistakes, they are anomalies that raise eyebrows. If you can't trust paperwork connected to a famous death, you have to ask why those records were wrong. And when people linked to that night, like Suge Knight, drop hints instead of denials, it deepens the mystery. When Suge once said in an interview, "Tupac not gone," he didn't provide context or proof. He didn't recant. He spoke cryptically and left it there, as if keeping a dangerous secret within reach of those who knew how to interpret it. Then there are the numerous alleged sightings. Over the years, people in other countries, often in Cuba, have reported seeing a man who looks like Tupac. Grainy videos, blurry photos, eyewitness claims, taken individually, they might mean nothing. But accumulate them over decades, and a pattern forms. Repeated reports of someone with the same build and way of moving, disappearing before a clear photo can be taken. Coincidence becomes less plausible the more time happens. Add an important detail. Tupac's aunt, Assata Shakur, fled to Cuba years earlier after escaping prison in the United States. She lives under the protection of Cuban authorities and remains a controversial figure on lists the US government watches. Cuba has a history of sheltering individuals who left America under politically charged circumstances. If someone were going to vanish and be protected by a foreign government, Cuba is a place where that could realistically happen, especially if help came from people with resources and international contacts. So when investigators find Cuba files in the belongings of a person under federal scrutiny, it's not trivia. It suggests possible logistics, travel arrangements, safe houses, payments, contacts. If such documents exist, they could show planning, coordination, and assistance. That isn't merely about hiding a person. It implies a long-term, well-resourced operation. A claim once made by Michael Nice, a former bodyguard who said he helped swap Tupac's body at the hospital and fly him out before he disappeared, further complicates the story. Nice said he had proof and then vanished himself. People called him a liar, a fantasist, or a man looking for attention. But the pattern is the same. Someone makes a big claim, then disappears without explanation. If witnesses can go missing now, in an age of phones and tracking, imagine how much easier it was 3 decades ago to cover a trail. And consider this: if federal investigators find old tapes, financial trails, and witnesses who were previously unwilling to speak, those pieces could reconstruct a very different picture of the 1990s music scene. What looked like rivalry, braggadocio, and violent rivalry might have been overlaid with organized efforts to control narratives and shield certain actors. If that's true, Tupac's death might not have been an isolated assault, but part of a larger pattern of coercion and secrecy. The stakes are bigger than just one unsolved murder. If evidence shows a major music executive coordinated with foreign contacts to hide an American figure, we cross into serious territory. International cooperation to conceal someone could involve diplomatic leverage, intelligence contacts, or criminal networks. It becomes less a music industry scandal and more a geopolitical incident. The idea of faking a death is dramatic, But the reality of orchestrating a disappearance, swapping records, tampering with medical files, bribing officials, arranging aircraft, moving people across borders, is complex and requires resources. That's why people with deep pockets and global influence are central to these theories. Right now, the legal action unfolding doesn't necessarily accuse anyone of orchestrating Tupac's vanishing, but it does pull open boxes that have been kept shut for years. Old recordings that may have been suppressed, ledgers with unexplained payments, witnesses who once were afraid to speak and now might be safer. All of these can change a cold case into fresh evidence. The past is suddenly alive with new possibilities. So where does that leave us? The simple way forward is to wait for the facts to come out in court. If tapes are entered into evidence, if financial transactions are traced, if names are read aloud under oath, we will finally move from speculation to verified history. Until then, McCree's careful words, "The truth always comes out," reverberate. They remind us that even the most firmly held narratives can be overturned when new proof appears. If the day comes when those old tapes play and the filed documents see daylight, people will have to reassess not only the night in Las Vegas, but also the decade that followed. A myth could collapse, taking with it parts of a cultural era that millions accepted without question. And if Tupac did find refuge somewhere and survive beyond that evening, then everything we thought we knew about the man, his music, and his death will need rewriting. For now, the question isn't whether someone wants to hide the truth, it's whether enough people are willing to look, listen, and demand answers. Because when legal records, eyewitness accounts, and family testimony converge, rumors stop being rumors. They become evidence. And evidence, however long hidden, is eventually hard to ignore. The world may not be ready for everything that would surface, but the facts don't wait on readiness. They simply wait to be revealed.